The sterile, metallic tang of the hospital corridor pricked at my nostrils, a familiar scent that usually brought with it a different kind of dread, one of waiting rooms and minor surgeries. Today, it was the smell of a moral abyss. My hand trembled, clutching the thin plastic of the phone receiver. Dr. Ramirez's voice, a calm professional drone, spoke words that carved a fresh canyon in my chest, a chasm so deep it threatened to swallow the last fragile fragments of my soul. "Mrs. Albright," she'd begun, her tone soft yet firm, "we have the results from your preliminary tests. You are a perfect 10 out of 10 match for our patient, Mark Jensen." The name, a jagged shard of ice, pierced through a decade of meticulously constructed scar tissue. Mark, the man who killed my son. He lay dying, and I, the woman he had shattered, was his only hope. The white walls of the consultation room seemed to press in, blurring at the edges, and I could feel the cold sweat bloom on my palms as the full weight of it, the sickening, impossible irony, settled like a tombstone over my living heart. Life before Mark's unraveling had been a warm, sun-drenched photograph, perpetually framed. Our little two-story house, nestled on a street lined with ancient oaks, always smelled of freshly baked bread or the earthy scent of Liam's latest science experiment. Liam, my beautiful boy, with his wild, curly brown hair that always flopped into his bright, curious eyes, was the absolute center of our universe. He was a whirlwind of questions and laughter, his small hand perpetually nestled in mine. Mark, then, was my steadfast partner, the bedrock beneath our dreams. He worked hard, long hours as an architect, but always made it home for Liam's bedtime stories, his voice a low, comforting rumble as he'd read about dragons and faraway lands. I remember evenings curled on the sofa, the three of us, Liam's head on Mark's lap, Mark's arm around me, the television a gentle hum in the background. The scent of pine and cinnamon from the holiday candles, Liam's small, contented sighs, Mark's quiet, reassuring presence. Those were the moments I clung to, believing them to be immutable, solid as stone. He was patient with Liam's boundless energy, teaching him how to fix things, how to build paper airplanes that soared across the living room, always with a soft smile playing on his lips, a gentle crinkle at the corners of his kind blue eyes. We planned for more children, for exotic family vacations, for a retirement spent watching Liam grow into the remarkable man we knew he'd become. Our life felt, in every conceivable way, perfect, but the edges of that perfect photograph began to fray, imperceptibly at first. It started subtly, a tightening around Mark's mouth when Liam interrupted him during a work call, a new sharpness in his tone that made my heart lurch. He'd dismiss it as stress from a demanding project, and I, ever the optimist, would believe him. The small arguments between us, once rare and quickly resolved, grew more frequent, their barbs laced with an unfamiliar venom. He'd come home later, the scent of stale beer clinging faintly to his clothes, a detail he'd brush off with a tired sigh about client dinners. His eyes, once so open and loving, would sometimes hold a strange, distant glint, as if a storm was brewing behind them, invisible to everyone but me. I remember one evening, during a particularly tense discussion about finances, his hand slammed down on the coffee table, shattering a crystal coaster. The silence that followed was deafening, the tiny glass fragments glittering on the dark wood like malevolent stars. He apologized immediately, his face pale with shock at his own outburst, and I, scared but wanting to believe, clung to his remorse. Liam, however, started spending more time in his room, his vibrant energy muted, his questions less frequent. I saw it in his eyes, a flicker of something resembling fear, quickly masked. He started picking at his dinner, his appetite waning. "Daddy's just tired, sweetie," I'd whisper, trying to soothe a dread I couldn't articulate, a cold, creeping sensation that something fundamental in our home had shifted. The night it happened remains a brutal, cinematic loop in my mind, replaying in agonizing slow motion. It was a Tuesday, a school night. Mark had come home late, his face flushed, his breath thick with liquor. He stumbled in, muttering about a bad day, a demanding boss, an unfair world. My voice was calm, too calm, as I suggested he get some rest, that we could talk in the morning. That's all it took, a spark. He exploded, throwing his keys across the room, cursing the world, cursing me. He accused me of not understanding, of always judging. His words were a torrent of hurt and anger, and I remember thinking, this isn't my Mark. His face was a mask of rage, contorted and ugly. Then, Liam appeared in the doorway, drawn by the shouts, his small body a fragile silhouette against the dim hallway light, his favorite faded dinosaur pajamas too big for his suddenly small frame. "Mommy? Daddy?" "What's happening?" he whispered, his voice thin with terror. Mark, mid-sentence, saw him, and for a split second, I saw the rage flicker, replaced by a flash of shame, then an even greater fury at being seen. He took a furious step towards Liam, not to hurt him, I believe, but to force him back to his room, to keep him from witnessing the ugliness. But Liam, in his innocent fright, took a step back, tripped over the rug, and fell, his head hitting the sharp, unforgiving corner of the antique oak credenza that held our family photos. The sickening thud echoed in the sudden, absolute silence of the room. A terrible, guttural sound tore from my throat. Mark froze, his eyes widening in horror, then he swayed, his hands coming up, limp, useless. Liam lay still, a spreading crimson bloom on the pale wood floor, a river of red emanating from his temple. My scream finally tore free, raw and primal, as I dropped to my knees, cradling my child, his small body already growing cold, his bright eyes staring unseeing at the ceiling. The ensuing days were a blur of unimaginable pain, a kaleidoscope of harsh light and suffocating shadow. The flashing red and blue lights of the police cruisers, reflecting off the polished wood floor where Liam's blood had been. The paramedics, their faces grave, their words mercifully muffled, my own voice, cracked and hollow, trying to explain to a kind-faced officer what had happened, the words catching in my throat, tangled with grief and a betrayal so profound it tasted like ash. Mark was taken away, his face a ghostly white, his eyes wide and vacant. He confessed, a broken, slurred whisper of guilt, to involuntary manslaughter. The funeral was a nightmare of lilies and hushed condolences, faces I barely recognized floating in and out of focus. Friends and family tried to offer comfort, but their words were hollow, ringing in the empty space Liam had left behind. Mark's family, however, chose a different path. They rallied around him, painting me as hysterical, as someone who had pushed him too far, made him snap. His sister, a woman who once called me her best friend, came to the house with eyes as cold as stone, accusing me of abandoning Mark in his time of need. "He's suffering too, you know," she'd hissed, her voice barely a whisper, yet it felt like a shout, "He loved Liam." The public whispers, the knowing glances at the grocery store, the way people averted their eyes. I was a pariah, the grieving mother whose husband had killed their child. The chasm between Mark's family and mine grew wider, deeper, an unbridgeable canyon of blame and sorrow. I felt utterly alone, adrift in a sea of judgment and my own unbearable grief. Rock bottom was a tiny, dust-choked apartment, a universe away from the home I'd shared with Mark and Liam. I lost the house, the memories too painful, the mortgage too heavy. My job, once a source of stability, became an impossible burden, my mind too scattered to focus. Every morning, the silence of the small space pressed in, an agonizing reminder of Liam's missing laughter. I existed. I ate dry toast and drank lukewarm coffee. I stared at walls. The scent of disinfectant and stale air was my constant companion. Guilt was a heavy cloak I wore, thick and suffocating. Guilt for the arguments, for not seeing the signs, for not protecting my son. Betrayal gnawed at me, a relentless, cancerous growth. How could the man I loved, the father of my child, have done this? Mark was sentenced to 15 years. 15 years for a lifetime taken. I visited him once, in that cold, sterile visitor's room, the plexiglass separating us. He looked older, hollowed out, but his remorse, if it was there, meant nothing to me. I simply stared at him, numb, until the guard signaled time was up. The rebuilding was excruciatingly slow, a glacial crawl out of the deepest pit imaginable. Therapy helped, a kind woman with gentle eyes who taught me how to breathe again, how to anchor myself to something, anything, beyond the pain. I found solace in small things, a sunrise, a cup of hot tea, the quiet companionship of an old golden retriever at the animal shelter where I began to volunteer. One breath, then another. That was my mantra. 10 years, a decade had passed since that night. The scars were still there, deep and unyielding, but they no longer bled fresh every day. I had built a new life, a quieter one, centered around my volunteer work and a small, cherished circle of friends who understood that some wounds never truly heal. My apartment, while still impersonal, felt less like a tomb and more like a sanctuary. I had even started painting again, finding a strange release in the vivid colors. Then the call came, the one that shattered the fragile piece I'd painstakingly constructed. It was the bone marrow registry. Years ago, in a moment of wanting to make some small, positive impact on a world that felt utterly broken, I had signed up. Now, a match, They needed me to confirm my availability for preliminary testing. And then, the name. Mark Jensen. The leukemia was aggressive, they said, advanced. He needed a transplant, and I, inexplicably, was his only viable match in the entire national database. My blood, the very same blood that coursed through Liam's veins, was the key to extending the life of the man who had extinguished his. The doctor, Dr. Ramirez, cleared her throat, pulling me back to the stark reality of the present. Mrs. Albright, have you made a decision? Her eyes, though professional, held a glimmer of something more, an understanding of the impossible choice laid before me. I looked down at my hands, clasped tightly in my lap, noticing the faint tremor that had returned. The image of Liam, bright-eyed and laughing, flickered behind my eyelids, his small, warm hand in mine. Then, the memory of Mark's face, contorted in anger, then despair, followed by the image of him holding newborn Liam, tears of joy in his eyes. The hatred was a hot, bitter taste in my mouth, a venomous desire to see him suffer, to understand, truly understand, the emptiness he had condemned me to. To let him die, to watch justice, in its coldest, most unfeeling form, finally served. But then, the ethics. The Hippocratic oath, even if it wasn't mine. The fundamental human imperative to save a life, when only you can. Is this karma? Is it a test? To become a killer myself, indirectly, by withholding the one thing that could save him? To actively participate in his death, even if he deserved it? My son is gone, my future, destroyed. He took everything. But if I deny him this, what does that make me? Am I a monster, or a survivor? I ask you, Reddit, in this crucible of pain and impossible choice, if you were me, what would you do?